Y termino con las principales implicaciones
I'll
de la
conclude
hipótesis
by
de Hayek.
pointing out the main implications of the Hayek hypothesis. In what direction do relationships flow between the different orders? From the bottom up or from the top down?
Porque es que hay
Many
muchos científicos
scientists
que
think
piensan que las relaciones
relationships
son
flow from the
de
bottom
abajo
up.
arriba.
That is, they think physical and chemical reactions are the determining force in the world. These scientists are determinists or materialists.
Vamos, en pocas palabras, que yo hoy
In a nutshell, today I went to a movie which made a certain impression on me. I then had a Coke, which triggered certain physical reactions, and with that my behavior is predetermined, though we don't know how. Materialists hold that the simplest orders determine, from the bottom up, everything in the cosmos around us. In other words, cells and atoms are what led Beethoven to compose his Ninth Symphony. According to the Hayek hypothesis, this is nonsense. A simple order cannot account for more complex orders. Relationships must always flow from the top down. That is, complex orders explain, determine, understand, create, if you will, relatively simpler orders. However, we need only scratch the surface or think a little to discover that materialistic, deterministic ideology makes no sense, even if it is the one most scientists accept. If all of my creative behavior is actually determined by stimuli from the outside world, from the simplest orders, which is what determinists and materialists maintain, that's why they're called materialists, matter would determine spirit, instead of spirit determining matter. If, as materialists claim, the simpler orders determine the complex spiritual orders, then matter determines spirit. All my behavior, my being here, your reactions, all of this will be the result of chemical reactions in the brain and external stimuli. That's what they say. But let us apply materialistic determinism to materialistic determinism. Now we see, Mr. Materialistic Determinist, that your very idea, materialistic determinism, is also determined by external stimuli. And provided you wish to have a coherent viewpoint, you must see that if your idea that everything is determined by external stimuli is itself determined by external stimuli, then it lacks all foundation. It is simply the result of a chemical reaction of atoms. No, listen. I say external stimuli determine everything except my idea, which occurred to me and is creative, etc. The fact is, dear students, this is absurd, for it is not even possible to conceive of a world devoid of what classical philosophers called free will. Materialistic determinism does away with free will. It implies that everything we are doing, all of our behavior, and all human creativity, etc., is predetermined by certain chemical reactions and external stimuli. We cannot conceive of such a world. Our world is one of creativity, of ideas that occur to us and that we hadn't thought of before, ideas that might emerge or might not emerge. It is a spiritual world. Besides the fact that by its own standard, a deterministic world makes no philosophical sense, it is a world in which there would be no free will, and it is an unimaginable world. It is a world in which mankind is superfluous. It is a world of robotic beings and penguins, and that is precisely what most of my colleagues study when they insist on applying mathematics and the static view to economics. That is why, though it seems very abstract, the method is so attractive and also so challenging and so important. A world of robotic beings and penguins is a static world in which an increase in the population is counterproductive, since everything is given, and thus, the more penguins there are, the less each penguin gets. There are the same number of fish, and if there are many penguins, then each gets fewer fish, and the penguins go hungry. Materialistic determinism, the idea that the lower phenomena determine the higher phenomena, leads to the static view. It leads to Malthusianism. It leads to the notion that human beings are like rats, and the fewer there are, the better, etc. The approach of Hayek and Mises, that economics is a science of the spirit, of creative ideas, and that complex phenomena account for simple ones and not vice versa, in other words, relationships flow from the top down, leads to the dynamic view of the market. It leads to the idea that the central role belongs to creative human beings, endowed with a great creative capacity to discover new ends and means, and to the idea that the restrictions of the outside world are not given by the objective elements physicists study, but instead forget that the outside world changes every day as a result of entrepreneurial creativity. So, apart from the more or less theological digression we have made, that it seems anti-scientific to adamantly believe nothing can exist beyond our own minds, especially since we have the obligation to be modest and acknowledge the limitations on our minds, we must leave open the possibility that more complex orders exist.